The common problems that people have in their neck and head are in some ways remarkably similar to the problems in the arms. This is quite understandable as both the arms and the neck attach to the upper end of the torso. However, the problems in the arms are a bit more straightforward, in the sense that you will find almost everyone, no matter how different their postures are, has the same retraction and bending of the arms. The neck and head are a bit different. You'll find that some people, especially those who are thinking about their posture and want to have good posture, will retract their neck and head, sometimes quite massively. You'll even see people with the back of their head behind their pelvis and heels. Others, however, will allow their head to droop forward into what's often called forward head posture. Those who are retracting their head are often doing so to avoid this problem of forward head posture. But the peculiar thing about forward head posture is that you will virtually never see someone whose head is forward of their lower ribs and pelvis. You'll see maybe the nose or the very front of the face forward, but I would say a person in this condition still has their head too far back. These problems are of course wrapped up in what's happening in the torso. When your rib cage is tilted back at the top and forward at the bottom, you slacken your thoracolumbar fascia. Without the support of your back, your head can't stay up. It must either come back and down or forward and down. When it comes to our finer manipulations of the neck and head, the purpose is typically going to be to open the airway. Our posture and our breathing are in a way one and the same. Proper breathing is dependent on the condition of the torso and the whole body. F.M. Alexander himself was known for some time as the breathing man, and though he emphasized that the correct geometry of the torso was the basis of good breathing, there's also a lot we can do with the head and neck to open the airway. It's important to remember that the breathing apparatus is intertwined with the digestive system. There are two modes of using the mouth and throat: swallowing and breathing. These two modes are in some ways opposed to each other. That is, you cannot breathe while swallowing. This is because the larynx needs to be closed when you swallow food, so that food doesn't go into your lungs and cause serious damage. In order for our mouth and throat to efficiently transition between these two modes, we need the fascia taut and we need due tension in the musculature. That will help us whether we're swallowing or speaking or breathing. If we want to lengthen our pharynx, which is the passage from the mouth and nose down the throat, we need to pull the larynx back and down. The larynx is the voice box, which is at the entrance to the trachea and lungs. You can feel your larynx by putting your hand on your throat when you swallow. You'll notice that when you swallow, your larynx goes forward and up, and it needs to do that to close off the airway and open the esophagus. We really only want to do this when we're swallowing. If we keep the esophagus open while we breathe, we can end up with serious problems like aerophagia. The larynx is connected to the base of the tongue, and we looked at pulling the larynx back and down while making sure that we do not allow that to pull the tip of the tongue back. We want to lengthen the tongue by pulling the base back and down while keeping the tip forward. This way we can lengthen the pharynx, open the airway, close the esophagus, and efficiently breathe or speak. We spent a good amount of time examining how to move the head forward and up. The reason we want the head forward and up is so that the airway can be open and not kinked, which is what occurs when you retract your head. Our ultimate goal is to have the ear about in line with the frontal plane, with the mandibular angle forward of the frontal plane. That means the back of our head will be forward of the back line of our body. The back of our rib cage is sloped at the top end, because the ribs get smaller the higher you go up the spine. That means the distance between the front of the rib cage and the spine will get smaller as you go up. We want our neck to follow this trajectory and go forward and up. Manipulations of the head and neck must be carefully done, which means we need visual feedback. If you try to rely on your feeling sense, you will struggle to make progress. It's very easy for us to think we're moving our head up when in reality we're moving it down. Video recording yourself with a webcam or camera is always helpful, but when it comes to the head, it's absolutely crucial. Now let's address the idea of a free neck. Alexander's most famous words are probably his preventative directions, which go, "Let the neck be free to allow the head to go forward and up, so that the back may lengthen and widen." So what does it mean to free your neck? First, let's examine what these directions actually are. They are certainly not specific, actionable directions. You cannot, for instance, just lengthen and widen your back. Now, we've looked at a number of directions we can coordinate in order to lengthen and widen the back. Directions like lifting the rib cage up away from the pelvis, moving the upper torso forward and up while moving the lower ribs and lower sternum back and up, narrowing the lower ribs at the front. We've also incorporated directions to pull the iliacs at the front of the pelvis back and up. The point being, the actual directions that we use to generate a change in the geometry of our body are not simplistic, overarching ideas. They are very specific. The points on the body have to be defined, and the directions of movement have to be defined, and then both have to be put into a mental model and an actionable system. We do not give ourselves the direction to lengthen our back. We use the specific directions that will bring that about. Jean de Masoero makes the argument that this idea, allow the neck to be free to let the head go forward and up, back to lengthen and widen, is actually the end, not the means whereby. We use specific directions in order to lengthen and widen the back, and those directions are the means whereby. The resulting lengthened and widened back is just that, the result, the end, the goal. We shouldn't confuse the goal with the means by which we will achieve the goal. So let's return to freeing the neck. Is freeing your neck a specific act? I don't think any Alexander Technique teacher would say that freeing the neck is a specific thing that you do. No, having a free neck is a description of the end result of what happens when you have improved your posture, which for us means it's what happens when your fascia is taut and you have the support and leverage from that taut fascia. In order to have a free neck, you cannot be shortening your neck. If we pull our head back and down and bend the neck back, we will lose some range of motion. Certain muscles will overwork, while others will do nothing, and we will not have a free neck. The same thing can happen if we bend our neck forward and down. So our head's position relative to our torso is the determining factor of whether we will have a free neck or not, though obviously that relative position is dependent on the condition of our whole body, and in particular, our torso. If we want our neck to be free, we need the part of our spine that makes up our neck to be lengthened, just as we need the part of our spine that makes up our torso to be lengthened if we want a lengthened and widened torso. I want to be clear, though, that this is not in any meaningful way a restriction on moving the head and neck. While there are certain ways that we don't want to move our head and neck, specifically we don't want to unduly shorten the neck, that does not restrict our movement. We can even look straight up by pulling our head back, but when we do that, we want to do it in a way that will not shorten the neck. It's well known in the Alexander Technique world that you don't want to pull your head back when you sit down into a chair. That is a common starting point fault that Alexander and the many teachers that have followed him have pointed out. However, it's entirely possible to sit into a chair with your head pulled back in space, say while looking up, and do it in a way that doesn't shorten the neck or the torso. Now obviously it's more difficult. That's a challenge that most people don't really need to add, at least not for a long time. But my point is, keeping the neck lengthened and free is not a restriction on our movement. It's a guiding principle for making all the various movements that are possible in the most reasonable way. That is, the way that will be sustainable and not cause pain or injury in the short term or long term. Thanks for watching this series on controlling your neck and head. While many of the concepts we've looked at are a little more advanced, I hope you've gotten some good information and some ideas on how you can experiment and work to improve your posture. If you'd like some direct assistance in working to improve your posture, I do offer lessons in the initial Alexander technique. Part of the lessons, which are done one-on-one over Zoom, is that you will record the lesson through Zoom. So at the end, you will be able to go back and see what you're doing, and see when you're doing what you wanted to do and when you're not. Having that visual feedback while being prompted and guided by a teacher is an extremely effective way of accelerating your progress. And if you're not currently using visual feedback, having a teacher to force you to will help you to really get going on changing how you use yourself for the better. For more information, please visit my website, mechanicsofpoise.com, to book a lesson or to learn more about the initial Alexander technique system. Thanks again for watching. Questions and comments are always welcome in the comment section below, or at my email, delsartelessons@protonmail.com.